Hey, what's going on? Thank you so much for watching. It would mean the world to us if you could just scroll down, like, hit the subscribe button for the Snaps YouTube channel. It goes a long way towards helping us out. Now, let's dive into some college football. Well, it's a big boy. As within the hour, about an hour ago, we're recording this Wednesday at noon Central, January 3rd. It was just announced that LSU will be firing the entirety of its defensive staff, a purple wedding, if you will. I got the news last night. I'll explain that story. I think it's kind of interesting, but you never quite know if these things are going to come to pass or not. But it appears that it did. So a lot to get to. Aaron, what's going on, man? Feel like 10 seconds while I tweet out the link.
Yeah, I bet you feel pretty good right now, and I'm sure LSU fans feel pretty good as well of moving on from what they witnessed this year because you're not used to seeing it. Like I think, me personally, I think LSU, I think great defense. And maybe that's
Yeah.
because you and I played in an era of LSU where you were used to watching games that were like 14-10 or 14-7 or the national championship versus Alabama. Like it was always LSU had dudes on that side of the football. LSU was always the talk of like DBU and that side of the football was always just littered with first rounders. And then you turn on the TV this year, and it was embarrassing. And the stats showed it when it was all said and done. And it just was not even a good look. As we talked about the game from this past weekend versus Wisconsin, a Wisconsin offense that was not, I want to use the word horrendous, but not a very
Well, I
talented
think
offense this year, and they looked pretty damn
no,
good
they
for
were
LSU.
horrendous. No, they were
Yeah,
horrendous. Look at the
yeah,
numbers. They were really
yeah.
bad. And at LSU beat, this guy Cameron Robertson had a good tweet that lays out what you could call the Tanner Mordecai problem.
Mm-hmm.
That is, of the 12 FBS quarterbacks that LSU faced this season, 5 of the 12 either had season or career high passing totals against the LSU defense, a defense that used to strike fear into their enemies.
Mm-hmm.
42% of opposing quarterbacks had their best day of the year against LSU. You finished 104th in stop rate, which is up from the 133rd that you occupied for much of the season, but still 50. If a team got the ball against LSU, they scored 56.4
Ooh-wee.
time, meaning every time the team touched the ball, if you did a coin flip, it was more likely than not that the other team would score. They were ranked 105th total defense. They allowed over 6 yards of play, 416 yards a game.
I
20.
think the best thing right there. I mean, you want to look at stats here, T. I think you want to look
What?
at stats. I mean, they are the only team worse than them in the SEC when it comes to defensive stats for the season is Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
regular season.
category that you're in this season. It's not, where we're Kentucky or Auburn or Arkansas. Like, no, you're on the same level as Vanderbilt defensively. As Vanderbilt. I mean, you're giving up only 2 defenses in the SEC this year gave up over 400 yards per game. Vanderbilt at 454, LSU at 417 yards per game. The next team was South Carolina at 395.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that a defense that has multiple first rounders, and it started from the beginning of the season. It started from FSU, of the intent of the season of, first off, like putting Harold Perkins in a position where he wasn't able to see ball, get ball. And
Yeah,
obviously that pissed a lot of people off.
Harold Perkins, and he still
You
had some
neutered him.
okay stats, but like he even found, so Harold Perkins ended up finding his way to 5.5 sacks and 13 TFLs. A very good season for most people. No, for most people,
Most
right?
people, not
But
Harold Perkins good.
the only reason he even arrives at those type of numbers is just because he's that undeniable. If you had used him and featured him, and well, he could have blown up like he did last year.
He was a shell of what he was a year ago. He was literally a shell of what he was a year ago.
Yeah, he just disappeared.
Yeah.
Mike Golick Jr. tweeted very well a few weeks back after one of the big games where he said, man, it just makes me sad watching Harold Perkins Jr. this year. I would say this, at the onset of all this, because there is a lot of excitement amongst the fan base, right? And I can never escape the the similarities between like medieval times and college football, and the people demanded blood. They wanted
Mhm.
heads roll, and they got it, and the people are excited, right? The public execution is taking place. Everybody's out in the street. They're dancing on the bodies. There is a human element of this that I empathize with, and I do feel very badly about. Okay. Nobody wants to see anybody lose their job. These people have families. A lot of these are families that would have
Mhm.
moved to Baton Rouge recently. And now you have kids who are having to watch other grown adults talk about their fathers in very disparaging ways. Um, I mean, I'm just mentioning this to say that I empathize with it. And maybe even that is a bit insincere or calloused, because all this just comes with a but. And the but is that that is coaching, and you know
Yeah.
what you're getting into, and especially when you accept a job at a psycho college football place. You go be an NFL position coach, you'll make great money, and nobody's gonna know who the fuck you are.
Mm-mm.
Cares about who the Cardinals linebackers coach is. Nobody cares about who the Saints safeties and coach is, right? But when you get in the college game and everybody's a little thrown off and a little more obsessed, you're accepting that public ridicule may come if you fail to do your job. And that is the thing, that is
Mhm.
the other reality. The reality is, first off, when you take one of these jobs, you operate with a large profile. And the second part is, if you don't do well, you're going to lose your job.
Yep.
Now you are paid very well, right? And so that is kind of the offsetting portion of all this. And I guess I just don't want people to think that I'm just sitting here completely um just not cognizant of, there like is some sadness here, but at the end of the day, this is a good thing for LSU football, just in terms of on the field trying to win the game. So here's the official statement from LSU head coach Brian Kelly. Quote, "This morning I met with Matt House, Kerry Cooks, Robert Steekles, and Jimmy Lindsay to inform them that they would not return to our coaching staff in 2024. I want to thank each of these coaches for their work on behalf of our football program and our institution during their time here. Decisions like this are always difficult. We do not make them lightly, but they are made with the best interests of our program and our student athletes in mind. Moving forward, we will continue to build a championship caliber coaching staff in support of our mission to graduate champions." So House, Cooks, Steeples, Lindsay, a full purple wedding here.
I think there's numerous things that would frustrate LSU fans from this season. One, obviously being in the same category as Vanderbilt, which I laid out with a lot of the stats. Two, you look at the schedule and we look at the SEC as a whole this year. It wasn't like this wasn't a very dominant offensive year this season. There wasn't a lot of elite quarterbacks. There
No,
wasn't
that's
a
a
lot
good
of
point.
elite playmaker. Like you look at the West right now, and I mean, look at Alabama, and you look at the fact that Alabama put 42 on you. You look at some of the other scores throughout the season for LSU. You're like, how are those teams doing? I thought you laid out nicely too, T, where you talk about the quarterbacks having their best game of the season against LSU. So like you weren't in the Pac-12. You weren't in some of these conferences that were run by a bunch of elite quarterbacks. You were in as we've seen this year, a weaker SEC, a weaker offensive SEC, and you were still giving up those kind of stats. And then the kind of the trifecta for the entire thing on top of that was you wasted a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. You
That's where
wasted
the
multiple
real
for
anger. Yeah,
you
that's where
think
the
which
real
is that where the
anger
real
comes
anger
in.
is?
Well, no, no, no. I mean, look, I think the
I
real
mean,
anger
I think
is like
two things.
also
I think that's huge.
objectively, it was just so god awful as to be inexplicable, right? So, like,
Yep.
off just looking at the defense, it was probably bad enough to be fired. But if you're talking about what's the motivation behind raising the probably $6 million that it took to clean the entire staff, it's because you had a championship caliber offense. Like I saw
Mhm.
some takes that LSU would have won the Natty with a better defense. Maybe that goes a step too far. What you can feel very comfortable saying, this was absolutely a national championship caliber offense. And if
Mhm.
you had had it now, if you'd had a very good defense, yeah, you would have been right there. But even if you'd had an average defense, you
I mean,
probably finished top 10 in
what's the
the
difference?
country.
What's the difference between them and Washington? If you had a good defense, I mean, Washington's
Yeah.
your perfect, essentially brother in this situation when it comes to comparisons here. Your sibling of you both have elite offenses. You're built with quarterbacks that are going to be drafted inside the top 10. You have two of the best receiving cores in America. I mean, those are the two best receiving cores in America. You have two of the best offensive lines in America. Washington won the Joe Moore Award. I thought LSU should have gotten it. LSU was a finalist. Your offense and defense, your offenses are identical. Identical. And I think LSU is better because they actually have a run game. They've Jaden's legs plus running backs. Like, it was a better offense in Washington. I would take LSU's offense over the Washington Huskies offense today.
Yeah.
All you had to do
it's awesome
was
on
be
awesome.
an
It's
average
splitting
defense,
hairs,
which
but
Washington was the majority of the season. That's all you had to do.
Yeah, and I mean, you would have certainly beaten Ole Miss. FSU would have still been up in the air. Alabama would have still been up in the air. But again, championship relevant is the verbiage that I'm using. Look at who's back. Our boy, our resident purple and gold Washington fan, Turner Young, $5 super chat. Congrats, Jaden Daniels. I will forever make you this generation's Eric Crouch. Painting that as a Michael Penix Jr. quote. And then Turner Young, Aaron Murray finna make me cry right now. Another $5. Oh, we missed you yesterday, Turner. We'll get to Washington. Don't worry, that's coming up later. But yeah, no, because somebody else asked, wait, so everybody at 104.5 ESPN is telling me that they, and that's a local radio station that I'm on here, very plugged in LSU. And they're like, everybody's telling us that they don't have the money to make this change. So what happened? And this is where I think it gets a bit fascinating. So last night, I'm watching Killers of the Flower Moon, all 4 hours of it in one go. My family's out of town.
Oof.
And so a much needed intermission, I get a text from my guy, a very plugged in guy, and it's like, hey, it's happening. I'm like, what? So I call him, we talk for a bit. And this is a guy who is very, very plugged in, right? And not even he learned about this until very recently. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is, like, whatever the truth of the money was, because I heard a lot of different things, and there's multiple sources, and everybody tells you different things. You never quite know what to believe in college football, and everybody thinks they know, right? But I'd heard that they tried to get the money and weren't able to get it, blah, blah, blah. But there was, and this is how, and I'll say this for Scott Woodward, the AD, nobody knew about the Brian Kelly hire. And everybody seems to, like, it is so hard to keep a secret in this town. This is a very much a small, like, whatever you would say, like a small village, big town sort of, like, word gets around is all I'm saying, right? And nobody knew about Kelly. There was incredible misdirection where the most plugged in people thought it was Lincoln Riley. Even people flew out to see Lincoln Riley's stuff for a meeting that never happened. But so the point is, this was pretty masterfully done in terms of getting all the ducks in a row, get the money lined up, and finding that money somewhere, but then not having anyone know that it was actually going to happen. So,
was this decision from your conversation? Was this decision made pre or post bowl game?
I don't know the exact timing. I don't know. I mean, it would feel like, obviously the bowl game would feel like potentially a straw that broke the camel's back, but it's such a sweeping thing and so much money had to be raised. I find it a little hard to believe that it could just be made in 2 days. Though in the post-game press conference, Kelly did talk about, now we'll do our defensive staff evaluation. So I imagine, a bit of that was they've already been doing their defensive staff evaluation. So it was especially interesting because as I'm watching Killers of the Flower Moon, which I would recommend, by the way, very good movie, y'all. That is a movie all about kind of subterfuge and intrigue and behind the scenes betrayal. And it's got this very driving sort of suspicious soundtrack that the whole time is just thrumming and thrumming and thrumming. And then as I'm hearing about, all this maneuvering and everything that's going on and who's going to lose their job, who's going to replace, I just couldn't be struck by how devious some of this, some of college football can be, and these moves that are made and the plans that are laid. And what I don't know is if they have a DC lined up already. I do feel Kenny Nichols says hire Alex Grinch. See, that's where else it's kind of funny, right? You think about all the influencing factors in a decision like this, and I think it's impossible to deny that Alex Grinch didn't factor into this decision making. Because you saw how much damage it's done to not just the actual wins and losses of the USC program, but to the belief in Lincoln Riley. As all of a sudden, everybody thinks Lincoln Riley sucks, which is crazy. When he was 11-1 going to play in the Pac-12 championship, we thought he was maybe one of the best coaches in the entire country. Now we're like, is he even tier 2? So I think that played a role. In terms of what's next, I don't know about DC. I feel there is a lot of rumors again, but nothing's ever official until it's official. The prime
Mhm.
example of this is my old man is like best friends with Ed Ogeron. Told him he one year he was coming to be LSU's defensive line coach. My dad goes public with it. Told him he could. That same day, Lane Kiffin flies in a helicopter to Destin, where Coach O is on vacation, offers him multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars more, and takes him to Tennessee. So anything can change last minute. But I
Mhm.
think right now they're trying to bring in Bo Davis from Texas as the D-line coach, steal him away like they stole away Cortez Hankton from Georgia. And they're trying to bring Corey Raymond back, the godfather of DBU, to try to resuscitate some of that defensive backfield. And then in terms of DC, I'm not sure in that regard. And again, I don't know if those moves are going to go through, but that's the ideas that I've been hearing from a lot of different directions. Like that's nothing, it's all over Tigers. I don't think that's anything that's really
Yeah.
blowing anybody's mind.
Well, and I'll say this about the job. It is different than the USC job. Like if you had to rank one, like, okay, which one would you rather have? The Southern Cal job or the LSU job? I'm taking the LSU job all day, every day. Because it
Oh,
does
it's a
have
very
tradition.
attractive
It's a
job, dude.
very I mean, it's one of the more attractive defensive jobs in America, I would think, because of the history, because of the ability to recruit, because of the type of athlete that is in Louisiana. You and I kind of hit on the recruiting topic a little bit yesterday. I mean, they just got a 5-star flip at the defensive tackle position. You can recruit the state of Louisiana and get guys that are outside the New Orleans kind of area, and turn those guys into NFL talent. They do it better almost than anyone else in the country. It's
Yeah.
like the
And
talent's
Corey
there, the
Raymond did a lot
tradition's
of
there, the
that.
resources are there, the want is there, the history's there. This is it's a sexy job, man. It's a
It
sexy
is.
job,
And
and
they'll
you got to
pay. I
you
mean,
got
they were
and
paying Matt House $2 million.
yeah, and you have Brian Kelly as the head coach too. And I think there's a
Um,
lot of security, and I think there's a lot of security knowing that Brian Kelly ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Like
That's a
Brian Kelly's
very
set.
fair point. Now, maybe you're feeling a little insecure because this is now 2 years in a row that Kelly has proven he will make the tough decisions. I mean, again, Brian Polian got fired after year one, and Brian Polian was his first hire. That was
Yeah.
the hand of the king. But special teams went so awry that he moved on. So, like, he will make
Or
the tough decisions. There's a lot of talk and chat about Kelly to Michigan. Look, I think that there's a ton of hypotheticals there.
Michigan has their guy if Harbaugh moves on.
Okay, so for that, okay, so I was going to say a few things. First off, there's a ton of hypotheticals there. Secondly, um, always remember, guys, it behooves any agent to keep their client's name in any job opening because it becomes leverage to get more money. It's why I still don't believe that A&M was going to hire Stoops, though maybe they were. Like, you always want your guy's name to be involved. And as Aaron just said, Michigan wouldn't want Brian Kelly. I think
No.
Michigan would go Sherrod Moore.
All day, every day. All day,
Yeah.
every day. I mean, he's what you've seen from the offense from Michigan, the fact that he was the
Ooh, that
head coach for the
Alabama
majority of the times.
game plan was a
Yeah,
masterpiece.
he is going to be the next guy if Harbaugh does decide to move on. The question for me is, how worried is LSU heading into next season, knowing that now you have to replace both coordinators? It's a tall task, and now a conference that adds two powerhouses to it.
Well,
Like, is
I
there a
would
worry of them
say
falling behind? You know, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Ole Miss is rolling right now. Like,
at
are we
the
talking about
risk
like
of
a middle of the
being
pack LSU
a
team all of a sudden?
well, okay, no, well, that's what's interesting because I thought middle of the pack if you ran it back with House. So already now you
I'm just
think
saying,
defensive
regardless.
I know, but I'm saying defensive coordinator change. You think, okay, you've now probably improved on that side of the ball, especially if you do go get a Bo Davis and a Corey
Hopefully,
Raymond,
yeah.
right? So you maybe score that a little higher. And when it comes to offense, I don't know exactly what we're going to do there, but I'm guessing it's going to be in-house. Joe Sloan's the quarterback's coach. He's been a
Hmm.
coordinator before. They just had him and Cortez Hankton as co-OCs. How do you keep both those guys happy? I don't know, but I think it's probably going to be Joe Sloan. And the thing is, again, Brian Kelly, too, it is like his side of the ball is the offense. He sits in the meeting
Yeah.
room with the quarterbacks. So, like, and he's the one that found Tommy Reese, right? Like, so, like, I
Hmm.
trust Brian Kelly in that regard. So it's not easy, but you feel like you almost automatically improve on defense because there's nowhere to go but up. and you were always going to fall on offense. So it's just, how much at this point.
John Schultz in the chat, appreciate it. Over 800 in the chat. Hell of a love the live response today. Obviously, we have our insider T-Bob there in Baton Rouge, giving
bro,
us all
we're
the
almost
goodies.
at 12.5. We're at 12.4, dude.
I know. We're almost at 12.5, which was the goal. So let's see if we can do it this show. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate everyone joining us on a Wednesday. Hanging out, man. Breaking down LSU, the future of them Tigers.
So yeah, I think that, let's be clear. LSU still has major hurdles to overcome. Mekhi Wingo's going to the draft, so you're losing an All-American interior defensive lineman. The secondary that you do, here's the deal. You better hope, because I know LSU had personnel issues, right? But my evaluation is that you had personnel issues exacerbated by coaching. I hope that I'm correct, because if the players just really aren't that good, which, I don't know. Look, when you got Wisconsin wide receivers cooking your DBs, that's a problem. If the players really aren't that good, then maybe this doesn't lead to the improvement
they can't be that bad.
would.
They're not that
I
bad.
I agree. Look, I think when you look at the lack of development from Mason Smith, the fact that Mekhi Wingo took such a step back, the fact that Harold Perkins completely disappeared. Yes, I feel like they should all benefit greatly off of this move, and you should be better on that side of the ball. Does that improvement, though, again, offset the step back that you'll take offensively? Just because, the offense is going to be awesome. Don't get me wrong, but you're just not going to have Jaden Daniels.
The offense will be great. There's too much skill in the offensive line returns. I think that's as we've learned this season from watching some of these teams. If you have an offensive line, you have a chance.
Yeah, true.
And LSU's returning an offensive line and a pretty damn good one as well. And another offensive line that will be fighting for that Joe Moore Award by the next season. So they're going to have the skill. They're going to have the offensive line. I think we've all been waiting to see what Garrett Nussmeier looks like when he is fully unleashed and given the chance. And he looked really good last year versus Georgia in the SEC championship game. Mind you, it was kind of mop up duty at the end when the game was over with. But then you've seen it throughout the past 2 years. Then obviously you saw it in the bowl game. And then you said it well yesterday, like in situational football, being able to have the cojones to drive the team down the field to win a bowl game, that's when you know the guy's got some rocks. Like that's what I want to know out of my quarterback in situational football. Can you put the team on your back, drive them down the field, regardless of good, bad, whatever talent around you? He did that in the bowl game. So yeah, I feel really good about the offense. That why it may not be the number one offense in the SEC, maybe one of the top 5 offenses in the country, it's still going to be really competitive. It's probably still going to be a top 5 offense in this conference. It just can the defense.
I think it'll definitely
get better, and I feel like the defense has to get better.
They'll get again. They will get better because that's why everybody got fired, because it's literally almost impossible to get worse. It is.
You could be worse. You could let Vanderbilt pass you.
Yeah, I said almost.
You technically could be worse.
I said almost. You could almost impossible to be worse. So it's just a matter of how much better. Chance Babin, will the new DC not want to hire his own position coaches? That's a good question. But then again, when you're talking about a guy like Bo Davis, that is a guy that almost anybody would take on their staff for a defensive line coach, expert recruiter, developed a lot of good talent through the years. And when you're talking to a guy like Corey Raymond, especially in Louisiana, he's a Louisiana legend in terms of understanding the culture, how to land guys. Also, what Chance's question really makes me wonder is part of this timing, part of it was certainly finishing the season, all this other stuff. Were they able to line up DC candidates without it getting out? That's because as I said,
would they have cared? Does that matter though? Does that really matter?
What?
Like keeping it a secret? Like does that?
Well,
why would you care?
No, my point is whether it mattered or not, they did it. Well, because they don't. They had everyone. Like I just 2 days ago, before I got that call, I was saying that I believe that it was more likely than not that House was going to be back. From everything I'd heard,
you and I have also talked offline about how there was.
Well, I would say this: even a couple weeks ago, I think Brian Kelly thought Matt House was coming back, unless he was doing some deep level games that go beyond what I think makes sense.
Well, also you and I kind of talked offline about possible other powers in this situation that were kind of making the decision of we want to move on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah.
not
So
it's we know it's not always the coach that has the final say in these spots. And not I don't know if Brian Kelly did or did not, come down with the hammer and say enough's enough, especially after the bowl game. But like there's a lot of people who especially in this part of the country have a hand in the cookie jar when it comes to making these
see, and
decisions,
this is where it gets tough because it's just tough to know what to believe because it was
especially in a
kind of
corrupt
my
ass state like
feeling.
Louisiana.
True. I mean, you laugh, but
I know.
depressingly true. I think the thing where it gets in that's just really hard to parse is so. Like I said originally, I think Brian Kelly was even kind of saying that House was going to be back, but what's the motivation behind that?
Yeah.
Was he told we don't have the money, or did he want to
Mhm.
keep him? Was it coming from above him, or was it all a game? And the whole time he was saying this, it was never going to be happening. Like you just don't know. The political machinations in college football are fucking fantastic. Like Greg Lamont raises a good point in the chat, talking about how a lot of us on local radio were kind of used as mouthpieces for this stuff and always are, saying I'm just convinced Woodward was floating this narrative to put pressure on the money people, right? We don't have the money. We don't have the money. See
Mhm.
the bowl game, and they're like, "Well, fuck it, coach. Here's the money." So I cannot say how any of this went down with exact certainty. Um, I have trouble believing that it all went down post bowl game, but maybe so. I'm going to be interested to see how fast they move on a DC hire. I think that'll tell us how much and how long this has kind of been in the works for.
I feel like you gotta make it sooner rather than later, though. I mean, this you can't just you have to one obviously roster retention. Two, you get a lot more time with players than a decade ago. Like you get to actually meet with these guys in the offseason to start implementing your game plan. Obviously, there's spring ball that's coming on. There's the true, I guess, the second signing day that's coming on. So I don't think
The
this is something
timing,
that
the
you
timing doesn't make sense. It's not ideal because you had guys leave that maybe wouldn't have left, but
yeah.
it's also not bad because of what you just said.
No, it's not terrible, but I'm not saying like you don't want to give this a month. I think this needs to be done in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, no, oh, sorry. Yes, no, the hire needs to be made sooner rather than later.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, like, if you had maybe announced his firing even a bit earlier, like, does a Mekhi Wingo go to league? Maybe so, because he loved
Okay.
Robert Steeples all the way from high school. Like, that's one of his boys, and he also got fired. So maybe he'd just be done with it anyway.
Colby
Now
Myers
see
in the
this
chat.
this
Dave
is
Aranda. If Dave Aranda would let go, I think this would have been done a little bit sooner. But Dave Aranda
I
obviously
don't
back at Baylor.
again, from what I've heard, but who knows about any of this? Yeah, and he's back at Baylor, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he would have. I don't know how much appetite there was to bring Aranda back anyway. Maybe so.
Really?
Um, I don't know. I'm just saying I don't know. Like, okay, so Greg Lamont's talking about one of the local hosts here in Baton Rouge. He says Matt carried the water and let y'all do the work as well. And then another commenter, Dwayne D, says Lady Moscona was putting out the "we don't have money" BS. Don't believe a word that dude says. So the issue with interpreting it that way, talking about being it carrying the water or not believing a word the person says, is that makes it sound like he's in on the scheme. What's the old saying, Aaron? The only way to keep a secret, or if two people know a secret, everyone does, like something along those
Mhm.
lines, right? Like it's nothing that purposeful if you're in the local media. At least not if they're trying to truly keep it secret. Like the people who are telling me stuff, the people who are telling Matt stuff, they believe what they are telling you. Where the falsehoods and kind of subterfuge ends is the big question. And with Woodward and how he plays this thing, he seems to keep as tight of a circle as I have ever seen in
Mhm.
these scenarios. So it would not surprise me at all if people who generally are in the know and have a ton of power are just being fed misleading information,
Yeah.
knowing that it will trickle down into the media, and that's our guys that they think are good sources. And so we talk about it, and then it's like, oh, well, it was all a lie. It's pretty crazy.
Let me ask you this because I said about 5-10 minutes ago that Brian Kelly I truly believe is a top 10 coach in America. I think he's that next tier of guy that hasn't won a natty that, it's been obviously has had opportunities and has knocked on the door to be able to do that. But if it is year 4 and they do take a step back,
Well, this would be year 3.
This is year. Oh,
This is
excuse me.
year 3.
Year 3. My apologies. Whatever. Year 3, year 4. But year 3 is the big year, though. Like year
And
3 is the
he's
year.
been painting it as the big year. He has
It
been
is the
painting
big
it
year.
as
Well,
even
he made the excuses
before
to start
this
the season. Well, yeah, he made the excuses before this season, saying like, guys, like everyone is kind of going crazy because we won the women's basketball national championship, we won the baseball national championship, like both coaches in their second season. So now all of a sudden the joke was, oh my God, football year 2 with Brian Kelly, a coach of that caliber, he's going to break through and win a natty. And he's like, guys, like pump the brakes, like we have some major issues on defense. Especially in like he told us, and we all thought he was kind of BSing, but it ended up being true. Like they weren't good on that side of the football. But this is year 3.
Mm-hmm.
You're having to make major changes with both OC and DC. If
And
you
you're
do
losing
take
a Heisman winner.
and you lose, if you do take a major step back, say LSU 7-5 next year.
Oh, that would be. I mean, have you seen their schedule? Though 7-5 seems hard to believe. So LSU schedule is interesting in that they played 10 of 12 Power 5 teams, but when you think about how you think about these teams today on January 3rd, it's not quite as intimidating as it seems on the surface. First off, thank you, William Anthony. He says 3 people can keep a secret if 2 are dead. Exactly, right? That's what I was trying to get at. But so LSU opens with USC in Vegas. Looked way more intimidating 6 months ago, right? They don't even have a quarterback now, trying to figure it out. They have, and then I'm just going to run the big ones here. South Carolina, way down. UCLA, down. Ole Miss, okay, we'll give Ole Miss that. But it's at home. At Arkansas, at A&M, that doesn't feel like you thought it would. Alabama, obviously, but again, Alabama's at home. At Florida, Florida's way down. Then Vanderbilt, and then even home versus Oklahoma, who you would have thought was very good, but now is working an entire new offensive line, a new quarterback, and the defense continues to disappoint on the biggest stages. So I see 2 losses there.
Yeah.
So like a full 7-5 would be a disaster.